You're standing on the side of a highway. A van burns in the distance, its windows glowing orange. Men in robes sing hymns around it. Women hold hands, eyes closed, faces calm. They're not panicking, they're praying. Inside that van, their clothes, their food, their pasts. They're letting it all burn because their leader told them, this is how you purify the soul. A cult, hiding in plain sight. They call themselves nothing. The world calls them the garbage eaters. And here's the part that'll mess with your head. They didn't crawl out of society's bottom. They walked out of Harvard. So, how does a straight-A student end up dumpster diving for God? And what happens when you try to leave a cult that worships invisibility itself? This is the story of Jimmie T. Roberts and the Brethren, the cult that tried to erase itself. Every cult starts with a promise. This one began with a man who said the world was ending and that he alone knew how to survive it. His name was Jimmie T. Roberts, a former Marine, the son of a Pentecostal preacher. He believed every church in America had grown too worldly, too comfortable, too far from God. So, in the early 1970s, as hippies were turning to Jesus in what people called the Jesus movement, Roberts made his move. He started small. Colorado, California, street corners and campgrounds, preaching that true believers could live like the apostles. No homes, no jobs, no possessions, just a wandering life of pure faith, preparing for the end times. To someone burned out by the chaos of the 60s, that message sounded pure, clean. You weren't rejecting society, you were escaping it. He called his followers disciples. They called him Brother Evangelist. They gave up everything. Homes, cars, families. They sold their possessions and hit the road. Literally, at first, it looked like a revival. But here's where the line between devotion and disappearance started to blur. Because Roberts didn't want his followers to spread the gospel. He wanted them to vanish. By 1980, he ordered every member to drop out of sight. No contact with families, no fixed address. They became ghosts, the faithful scattered across America, hiding in plain sight. You couldn't track them, you couldn't visit them. Even their names changed. The movement had no building, no mailing list, just a rumor, whispered across truck stops and campuses. Have you seen the garbage eaters? Inside the group, namelessness wasn't symbolic. It was sacred. Members were told that creating or displaying graven images was sinful. They even covered faces on packaging and magazines, erasing the world, one picture at a time. No name, no image, no self. Invisibility wasn't just how they survived, it was how they worshipped. Picture this. You're walking across your college campus. You're smart, driven. You've been told your whole life that success means grades, money, prestige. But lately, something feels off. The world seems fake, materialistic, hollow. Then one day, a stranger walks up to you. He's calm. He smiles and asks, "Have you ever wondered what it'd be like to give up everything and follow Jesus? For real." That's how it starts. The Brethren didn't recruit the desperate. They recruited the idealists, the dreamers, the overachieve. Harvard, Stanford, students searching for meaning. In a world that felt spiritually bankrupt, their message, a simple, sinless life. No distractions, no possessions, no noise. A life exactly like the apostles, pure and clean. If you said yes, they didn't ask for money. They asked for your life. Sell your stuff, cut off your family, get in the van, and once you did, you were never alone again. They paired you with another member, 2 by 2, just like the disciples in Scripture. But that wasn't about faith. It was about surveillance, Your partner was there to make sure you stayed pure and stayed quiet. Slowly, your old life started to blur. Your clothes changed. Your name changed. You stopped saying I and started saying we. Every sacrifice made you need to believe it was worth it. Because if it wasn't, what had you just lost? That's how control works. Not with chains, but with choices. The more you gave up, the harder it became to turn back. And before you knew it, you weren't a student anymore. You were a wanderer, living off the trash behind supermarkets, convinced that every hardship was holy, that God was testing your faith through hunger, isolation, and pain. That's how the garbage eaters were born. Not out of poverty, but out of purity. At least, that's what they were told. Once you joined the Brethren, you were reborn, but not in the way you expected. You learned quickly the outside world was evil. Television? Sinful. Family? A temptation from Satan. Even your own reflection was prideful. You were told that to see your parents again was to risk your soul, that they wouldn't understand, that they'd try to drag you back into sin. And the more your family begged you to come home, the more it proved they were part of the test. That's how control works, through love. They didn't need walls. They built them inside your head. They cut you off from your family. That's estrangement. They stripped your possessions. That's lifestyle control. They told you the world would burn if you left. That's fear. You justified every sacrifice. That's cognitive dissonance. And when they silenced every outside voice, 5 steps, 1 prison, built entirely from the inside out. Every day had structure, morning prayer, street preaching, dumpster diving for food. Men and women ate separately, spoke separately. You were told this was how the early Christians lived. Pure, simple, obedient. But the truth was far darker, because that simplicity was dependency. You had no car, no ID, no money, no contact with anyone outside the group. And when you have nothing, you'll believe anyone who tells you it means something. The longer you stayed, the more your world shrank. And at the center of that shrinking universe was a man you almost never saw, Jimmie T, the founder, the ghost. He called himself Brother Evangelist, but to most members, he was just a voice. Orders passed down through older brothers, rules that changed without explanation, and his absence only made him more powerful. If you never saw him, you couldn't question him. He became less a man. Most cult leaders crave the spotlight. They need adoration to survive. Roberts didn't. He hid. His silence became scripture. His distance became divine. The less his followers saw of him, the holier he seemed. It wasn't charisma that bound them to him. It was mystery. Members whispered about him like he was already sacred. He didn't need to shout to control you. He just had to be unseen. That was the genius and the horror of the Brethren. They made obedience feel like freedom and disappearance feel like salvation. They thought they were shedding the corruption of the world, but every possession they gave up became another chain. Every comfort lost made them easier to control. The purity they chased was the prison itself. By the mid-1970s, the Brethren's quiet little movement had started to draw attention, and not the kind they wanted. It started in Arkansas, a farmhouse, dozens of people waiting for the end of the world, children sitting by windows, praying for the sky to split open. Neighbors called the police, a judge got involved, and suddenly, headlines, cult awaits the apocalypse. A families beg for their children back. Cameras rolled, reporters arrived, microphones in faces, and Jimmie T. Roberts vanished. That was the moment he declared war on visibility. He ordered everyone to disappear, drop out of sight. He said, no addresses, no phone calls, no families. If your parents tried to find you, you moved again. If they hired private investigators, if someone from the press showed up, you said you'd never heard of the Brethren, and it worked. By the 1980s, the group had slipped off the map completely. Police couldn't locate them. Reporters couldn't track them. Even families who once got letters stopped hearing anything at all. To the world, the Brethren became a rumor, but to the people inside, the silence became proof. Proof that they were chosen. Proof that they'd survived the test. And that's how Robert cemented total control. The outside world's outrage didn't weaken him. It fed his message. See? He'd say. They hate us because we are holy. Every raid, every headline, every desperate parent, all of it reinforced his prophecy. The world was ending. Only the faithful would be saved. And so the cult went dark. For decades, families formed search networks. Parents drove across states chasing rumors. A van behind a grocery store. A prayer circle near a highway. But the closer they got, the faster the group moved. Like ghosts evaporating into the night. You couldn't kill what you couldn't find. And the Brethren made sure no one ever could. For years, no one knew what happened inside the Brethren. Then, someone got out. Her name was Rachel Martin Duggar. In 1979, she escaped and wrote a book. She described life inside as a slow erasing of self. You stopped being a person. You became a vessel. Your thoughts, your wants, your name, gone. Remember those Harvard and Stanford students Roberts recruited? The ones who vanished into the road? One of them finally spoke. Jim Guerra, a Harvard student who dropped out to join. He wrote From Dean's List to Dumpsters. A memoir that sounded like fiction, except it wasn't. He remembered standing behind grocery stores, digging through trash, and convincing himself it was holy. He said, "You tell yourself it's purity, but really, it's control." For the first time, outsiders saw the machine Roberts had built, a system of faith designed to run without him. He didn't need to preach. His followers policed each other. They confessed their doubts, punished disobedience, and prayed the guilt away. No whips, no cages, just fear, silence, and the belief that to question anything was to betray God himself. But even in the deepest indoctrination, cracks appeared. A daughter missing her mother, a young man dreaming of home, a convert secretly listening to a radio, realizing the world hadn't ended. Those tiny doubts, those forbidden sparks of self, became the first signs of rebellion. And every time someone left, Robert's world got smaller. His paranoia deepened. The commandments tightened. He told them the apocalypse was closer than ever, that anyone who left would burn for eternity. But still, people started slipping away, and the world finally began to listen. For decades, silence. Then, a camera lens cracked it open. In 2011, filmmaker Evangeline Griego released God Willing, a documentary that followed parents searching for their missing children. They weren't chasing criminals, they were chasing ghosts. One mother drove thousands of miles, following whispers that her daughter had been seen at a gas station, at a bus stop, walking barefoot down a highway. Every time she got close, the trail went cold. The film showed what news stories never could. Parents aging, while their children stayed frozen in time, somewhere out there, still believing the world was ending. And what those parents feared most wasn't death, it was obedience. Their kids weren't hostages, they were believers, smiling, singing, certain they were right. That's what made the Brethren so chilling. There was no violence, no bloodshed, no compounds or weapons, just quiet devotion turned inside out. When Jimmie T. Roberts died in 2015, alone, of cancer, in Denver, he left behind no heir, no temple, no fortune, just a network of wanderers still following his words. After his death, 4 elders took over, men with names like Brother Hatzer, continuing the mission exactly as before. No headlines, no closure, just the hum of hymns on the open road. Even today, people still spot them in parking lots, on sidewalks, at rest stops, Bearded men with Bibles, women in long hand-sewn dresses, moving from town to town, preaching, collecting cans, fading before you can ask a question. And if you do ask, they'll smile and say, "We're just passing through." When people talk about cults, they usually focus on the leader. But the real story, the one that lingers, is what's left behind. For the Brethren, that legacy isn't written in headlines. It's written in absence. Mothers who set a place at the dinner table for decades. Fathers who drove across state lines, searching every rest stop and church parking lot. Brothers and sisters who still keep missing person flyers in their glove compartments, just in case. Some of those families never stopped searching. In the early 2000s, they formed the Roberts Group Parents Network, a community of mothers and fathers trading sightings, letters, and hope. They organized, they gathered, they held vigils for children who were still alive but unreachable. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about finding meaning in the waiting. And the strangest part? Most families didn't lose their loved ones to violence. They lost them to conviction. Their children didn't run away because they hated their parents. They left because they believed doing so was holy. That's the cruelty of the Brethren. It didn't steal through force. It stole through love, twisted into obedience. Survivors talk about it like living under glass. You can see the world, but you can't touch it. You can remember your mother's face, but you're told she's a temptation from Satan. You can crave a hug, but believe it's sin. And when you finally leave, the world feels alien. You've missed decades, technology, even your own sense of self. Some former members rebuild, others never fully escape, because the cult's real prison isn't made of people. It's made of ideas, and ideas don't die. They just wait. You'd think a movement like this would vanish when its leader died, but the Brethren didn't end with Jimmie T. Roberts. It simply dissolved deeper into the cracks. After 2015, leadership passed to a handful of men. Names like Jerry, David, Hatzer, they carried on exactly as before. No new commandments, no rebranding, just the same endless pilgrimage down America's backroads. There are still sightings. A small group camped behind a Walmart. 2 men preaching quietly outside a college. A woman in a handmade dress asking for work at a gas station. And just like before, when someone tries to approach, they vanish. Former members say the group has grown smaller, but tighter. They recruit rarely now. Only those who seem ready. People disillusioned by modern life. People scrolling through chaos online, dreaming of escape. That's the part most people miss. Cults like the Brethren don't survive because they have power. They survive because they offer clarity. In a world that feels loud, fast, and meaningless, they whisper a simple answer. Come with us. Leave it all behind. For some, that promise still hits the same nerve it did 50 years ago. The ache for purity, the longing for certainty, the fantasy that if you walk far enough away from the world, maybe you can start over. That's why the Brethren never needed fame. Obscurity was the plan. Secrecy was the gospel. And maybe that's why, after half a century, the cult with no name still walks among us. Not with banners or billboards, but with quiet conviction, believing that invisibility is holiness, and that is always just around the corner. When you strip away the mystery, the secrecy, the decades of wandering, what's left of the Brethren is something deeply human. The need to belong, the hunger for purpose, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, has the answers. That's what makes this story unsettling. Because the truth is, you don't have to live in a van or dig through dumpsters to feel that pull. You just have to be lost. The Brethren preyed on that moment the second you questioned everything. They offered meaning in exchange for freedom, certainty in exchange, and when life feels overwhelming, that trade can sound almost reasonable. That's why cults like this don't just disappear when their leaders die. Because what they sell isn't doctrine, it's relief, and that's the part that should scare all of us. Not because we join a cult, but because we all have moments where we want to escape the noise. To believe in something simple and pure and absolute, but the moment someone tells you they have the only truth, that's when you need to run. Because the second you stop questioning, you stop being free. If this story stayed with you, if it made you rethink what it means to believe, don't just scroll past. Ask yourself, who in your life might be searching for something so true? They could lose themselves finding it. Share this story. Talk about it. Because sunlight doesn't just end cults. It prevents them. And next time you see someone on the side of the road, walking barefoot, Bible in hand, remember, they might not be lost. They might think you are. And maybe, somewhere out there, that same van still passes by at dusk. Cracked windows, hymns drifting into the air. You glance at it for a second, then look away. But for someone inside, that song isn't just a hymn. It's a prayer for the end of the world that never came.